The moment my phone vibrated, I knew something was wrong. My fingers tightened around the device as I read the message I had sent hours ago. My son is in the emergency room. The reply from my mother was waiting below, brief and indifferent. We are busy with Margaret. As if that wasn't enough, she followed it with an insult directed at my child, their own grandson. Something inside me shifted, sharp and final. Without hesitation, I canceled their mortgage payments, their car loan, and every one of their credit cards. Later that evening, I found myself standing in the narrow corridor of the house where I had grown up. My eyes drifted across the wall lined with framed photographs, each one a frozen testament to my parents' unwavering devotion to my sister. There she was in her cap and gown, beaming at her college graduation. In another, radiant in white on her wedding day. In yet another, cradling her first child as my parents looked on, pride shining in their eyes. I searched for any trace of my own milestones, my own victories, but the wall told a different story, one in which I had never truly existed. A familiar tightness formed in my stomach, the same ache that had lived inside me for as long as I could remember. 35 years of yearning, of hoping, of waiting for recognition that never came. You'd think, after all this time, it wouldn't still hurt. From a kitchen, my mother's voice carried down the hall, light and expectant. "Karen, is that you? Come give me a hand with these dishes." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I hadn't come here to wash dishes. I had come to draw a line in the sand. Stepping into the kitchen, I found her bustling at the counter, hurriedly arranging a tray of appetizers. Margaret's celebration. Of course. My sister had just been promoted to department manager at a local bank, a position conveniently secured through our father's connections. "Can you finish these while I go get ready?" She didn't wait for my reply, already wiping her hands on a towel. "Your father picked up the wrong crackers. Margaret prefers sesame, not plain." I said nothing, merely nodded and took her place at the counter. Different day, same story. As I silently arranged the crackers, my phone buzzed. A message from Sharon, my former sister-in-law. "Did you tell them yet?" I hadn't. Because how do you tell your parents you're cutting them off financially after years of being their safety net? How do you explain that their only grandson had recently completed a family tree assignment at school and hadn't included them? The front door slammed, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. "Karen." My father's voice was flat, his gaze barely skimming over me as he entered the kitchen. "Where's your mother? Margaret will be here in an hour." "She's getting ready." He nodded once and disappeared into the living room without another word. I set down the last cracker and stared at the tray, the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing against my ribs. I thought of the times I had stood in this very kitchen, hoping for acknowledgement that never came. My full scholarship to UCLA, my promotion to senior analyst, the birth of my son, Mark. None of it had ever been enough. Not compared to Margaret, their miracle child, the long-awaited blessing after years of heartbreaking miscarriages. I had always been the practice run, the accidental success, the one they could afford to overlook. And they had. When my husband, Justin, walked out on me for a co-worker 3 years ago, I thought, finally, my parents would step up. Their daughter, suddenly a single mother, surely needed them now. But their concern had been for him. Had I focused too much on my career? Had I neglected my duties as a wife? Not once did they ask if I was okay. It wasn't them who helped me pick up the pieces. It was Sharon and Brian, Justin's parents. No longer my in-laws, but still my family. They picked Mark up from school when I was stuck late at work. They kept him on weekends when I had to travel. They showered him with love and attention, the kind my own parents had never been willing to give. Then, 6 months ago, everything changed. Suddenly, my parents were calling every week to check on Mark, inviting us over for Sunday dinners, offering to babysit. At first, I wanted to believe it. Maybe they had finally realized what they had been missing. Maybe they had finally decided to be present. Then Margaret's promotion happened, and suddenly it all made sense. They hadn't changed. They just needed money. My mother re-entered the kitchen, now dressed in a crisp new blouse, one that I had paid for. "Did you finish the appetizers? Margaret will be here any minute." I inclined my head and slid the tray toward her. "We need to talk." Her face flickered with unease. About what? Can this wait until after the event? It could, but it wouldn't. I'm stopping all financial contributions. My voice was steady. The blood drained from her face. What financial contributions? As if she didn't know. As if I hadn't been covering their car loan for 5 years. As if I hadn't paid for the new roof last summer, the property taxes, the vacation to Hawaii. Every single expense they had conveniently ignored while relying on me to handle it. My hands trembled slightly, but I pressed them firmly against the counter. The car loan, the credit cards, the home insurance, everything. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for words. Why would you do this? After everything we've done for you. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Everything you've done for me. We raised you. We made sure you had food to eat. The bare minimum. When Justin left, who supported me? When Mark was sick, who helped? When I got promoted, who even acknowledged it? Not you. Never you. My father appeared in the doorway, brow furrowed. What's going on? My mother turned to him, voice rising. Karen says she's cutting us off financially, after everything we've done for her. His expression darkened. Is this about that situation? We already explained. It's about everything. I cut in. It's about Mark calling Sharon grandma because she actually treats him like one. It's about you two skipping his birthday to go on Margaret's trip. It's about me needing emergency surgery and you refusing to pick him up because Margaret had a dinner 3 weeks ago. They stared at me, uncomprehending. I took a breath. I'm done. My mother's face crumpled, not with remorse, but with calculation. The car payment is due in a few days, and your father's medication. Not my responsibility anymore. The front door swung open. Mom, Dad, I brought champagne. Margaret, that was my cue to leave. I grabbed my purse. Karen, wait. You can't do this to us. But I could, and I was. As I stepped past Margaret in the hallway, she gave me a puzzled look. I didn't know you were coming to my celebration. I wasn't. I met her gaze, steady. Congratulations on promotion. Her achievement was never the problem. The problem was that our parents only had room to celebrate one of their daughters. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't in years. Relief. Mark was at Sharon's house. She had sent me a picture, him covered in baking flour, joy lighting up his face. Love. Pure. Unfiltered. Real. Because family isn't about blood. It's about the people who stay. 3 months pass in complete silence. No calls. No guilt-laced messages. Nothing but an empty, echoing quiet where manipulation had once lived. Then, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up with my mother's name. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button. But curiosity won. Karen, she said, her voice measured, each syllable carefully selected. We need to talk about this situation. The situation, that was what she called it, the unraveling of their finances now that I was no longer holding them together. There's nothing left to discuss, I replied evenly. A beat of silence. Then, with an unmistakable edge of resentment, she said, Margaret refuses to help us, says we need to learn how to handle our own expenses. I could hear the bitterness in her voice. Margaret, the golden child, the favored one, had finally drawn a line. And now, reality was crashing down around them. The car was repossessed yesterday. The mortgage is 2 months overdue. Not my concern. Not anymore. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and a small, deeply conditioned part of me truly was. The part that had spent decades believing their comfort was my responsibility. You can't just leave us like this, she insisted. We're your parents. Parents. A biological connection, not an emotional one. They had never been parents in the ways that mattered. I have to go, I said, glancing across the kitchen where Mark sat, completely absorbed in his school project. Mark has soccer practice. Karen, don't. I ended the call and blocked the number. From across the room, Mark looked up. Mom, what do you think? I walked over, leaning down to inspect his wake. At the top of the family tree, He'd drawn Sharon and Brian, labeled Grandma and Grandpa. Below them, he placed Mom and Dad, then himself at the bottom. No Margaret. No maternal grandparents. Is this everyone in our family? I asked carefully. He nodded, completely certain. These are the ones who love us. Simple, profound. True. That night, after Mark had drifted to sleep, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine, feeling the cool evening air wrap around me. I thought about inheritance. Not wealth, not property, but the intangible legacies we pass down, the beliefs about love, worth, and belonging. My parents had inherited their own wounds, their unbroken ideas about love. Ideas that made affection something to be owned, that turned parenthood into a ledger of debts rather than a bond of unconditional devotion. But cycles don't have to repeat. Patterns can be rewritten. Mark would inherit something different from me. He would know that love isn't a transaction, that family is chosen, that real bonds aren't forged through guilt and obligation, but through presence, care, and unwavering devotion. My phone vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. A message from Sharon. Brian's making his famous chili this Sunday. You and Mark coming? A small smile tugged at my lips as I typed back. Wouldn't miss it. This was my legacy now. Not guilt, not duty, not the endless, exhausting pursuit of approval that would never come. Instead, I had chosen connection, love, a family that existed not because of blood, but because we had chosen one another. For the first time in my life, I felt truly rich in what mattered. Looking back, I could finally see it clearly, the relentless struggle, the silent pleas hidden within every milestone, the desperate need to be acknowledged. My sense of worth had always been tangled in their validation, or more accurately, in its absence. The walls of my childhood bedroom had once been covered with academic certificates, spelling bee trophies, math competition medals, all gathering dust unnoticed, while my parents attended every one of Margaret's soccer matches, her dance recitals, even the most trivial school events. When I was accepted into UCLA on a full scholarship, my father had barely glanced at the admission letter. California, he scoffed. That's too far. And who's supposed to help your mother around the house? Not Margaret. Never Margaret. I left anyway. I worked my way through graduate school, built a career in finance, and reached a place where I never had to ask for help. Then I met Justin. Charismatic, confident Justin, who had an uncanny way of making me feel like I was the most important person in any room. His family welcomed me with open arms, holiday gatherings where my thoughts mattered, weekend barbecues where my words were heard. His mother, Sharon, would call just to check in. His father, Brian, once spent an entire afternoon teaching me how to change my car's oil, simply because he thought I should know. It was unfamiliar, this effortless acceptance, this genuine interest in me as a person. When Justin and I got married, my parents found something to complain about at every turn. The venue, the date, the menu. Margaret, standing beside me as my maid of honor, had looked utterly bored through the entire ceremony. My parents left early, citing Margaret's important morning appointment the next day. Justin's parents, meanwhile, stayed until the very end, helping clean up, embracing me as though I had always been theirs. Then Mark was born, and I thought surely that would change everything. It didn't. They visited once, stayed less than an hour. My mother held him awkwardly before handing him back. He looks like Justin, she remarked flatly, as though that explained her disinterest. Meanwhile, Sharon and Brian brought home-cooked meals, took turns staying overnight so I could sleep, and rocked Mark in their arms for hours, simply because they wanted to. Then Justin walked out. Not even the decency of a face-to-face conversation, just a text message. It was Sharon who found me curled up on the bathroom floor, sobbing. Sharon who packed an overnight bag for Mark. Sharon who took us both into her home while I tried to piece my life back together. My parents' response? A single phone call. Men don't appreciate women who prioritize their careers, my mother said, her tone disturbingly close to satisfaction. I warned you. As if my ambition had been the problem, as if I had deserved to be left. And yet, when they needed help, when their car broke down, when their bills piled up, it was me they turned to, and I had given again and again, hoping that this time it would be enough, that this time they might finally see me. Pathetic, desperate, But I couldn't stop. Not until that moment. Here's such a burden sometimes. Not until I saw the truth. It had never been love. It had always been an exchange. And my money had been the prize for their fleeting attention, never their affection, never their care. That realization shattered something inside me. But in that break, I found freedom. A week after I cut them off, my phone rang. "Margaret, what did you say to Mom and Dad?" she demanded. "They are spiraling over money." I told them no more financial aid, no more enabling. They think you're being cruel, that you're punishing them. But was it truly cruel to stop sacrificing myself for their comfort? Was it revenge to finally set a boundary? "I'm not punishing anyone," I said simply. "I'm just done pretending." A pause, then a quiet, unexpected admission. "They're never going to change. They've always been like this." "I know," I said, "but I have—" Another pause, then, softer. "Good for you." 2 simple words, and perhaps the most honest thing she had ever said to me. Now, months later, I finally understood what real freedom felt like.